Welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most interesting topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 168th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 620th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, May 7th, 2020. I am your host, Jerod Morris. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment occurred on Wednesday when the final 24/7 Sports rankings for the class of 2020 were announced. Jordan Geronimo is number 110, Anthony Leal is 131, and Trey Galloway is 133. All are four-star prospects. Now you may wonder, what's so great about three recruits with triple-digit rankings? Good question. Let's explore that a little further, and let's do it by comparing Archie Miller's recruiting results for the completed 2018, 2019, and 2020 classes, plus the early commitments in the 2021 class, to the four recruiting classes that preceded him from 2014 through 2017. At the top, there's not much of a difference. If anything, you could argue that Archie lags behind. The four classes prior to his arrival included 2 top 20 recruits, 4 top 50 recruits, and 6 top 100 recruits. Archie's 4 classes also include 2 top 20 recruits, but just 3 top 50 players and only 4 top 100 players. Advantage? The past, slightly. But now start looking under the hood a bit. The average ranking for the 16 IU recruits from 2014 through 2017 was 196. The median ranking was 174. The average ranking for Archie's 13 recruits thus far is 98. The median is 124. Big advantage to Archie. In other words, the average IU player from 2014 through 2017 was a mid-level 3-star prospect. That's what happens when you hit on some big names, but the rest of your recruiting strategy resembles a wild goose chase. For every OG Anunoby that hits despite a ranking of 294, you have to deal with players ranked 260, 391, 364, 410, and 436 who either never develop or don't start producing until they go somewhere else. The average IU player now is a solid 4-star prospect ranked right around where Juwan Morgan was. That is going to have an impact over time on a program's depth and ability to sustain success. And if we go one level deeper, Archie has executed a screeching 180-degree turn when it comes to Indiana's local recruiting. Between 2014 and 2017, IU enrolled just 2 players from the state of Indiana, James Blackman Jr. and Grant Galon. None of the other 14 players were even from Indiana's supposed Midwest breadbasket of Illinois and Ohio. Archie, on the other hand, has secured commitments from 8 Indiana players. Of the remaining 5, 2 are from the breadbasket states, plus Race Thompson is from Minnesota. Only 2 have been from outside the Midwest. It all adds up to Indiana being on a much firmer recruiting foundation now than when Archie took over. But let's be realistic here. Comparisons to the end of the previous regime only go so far. It's quite the low bar. That was a stretch of terrible roster management that ultimately got that staff fired. Archie should have been able to clear that bar by a wide margin, and he has. So this banner moment is not to give him extra credit, but just baseline credit. We were in a recruiting ditch, and Archie and his staff have almost completely dug us out of it. The key moving forward will be to turn this improved recruiting foundation into more consistent on-court success. It remains to be seen if Archie will be able to do this. But consider me right there among the large swath of IU fans who see how Archie has rebuilt the consistency of Indiana's recruiting and still believe that it's more likely than not that the consistent winning will follow. All right, now let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. Andy Bottoms is off this week, but make sure that you listen to the episode of Crimson Cast that he and Coach hosted last week. It was a great opportunity for them to indulge their love of IU football, so don't miss that. Andy, have a great night off.
Enjoy it and live it up.
Absolutely. But here with me this week, as normalcy returns to Assembly Call Radio, to my left.
He remembers the days when a movie cost $1. Heaven help you if you ever decide to pop your collar. Play hard, but remember, fake hustle is a crime. He's the coach and it's Tonsoni time.
No chicks will go out with you if you're not in the paper.
Coach, what's on your mind?
You know, in the off season, there's always a struggle to find stuff to talk about. But yet, I keep thinking about a lot of things. The schedule, as the schedule starts coming out, and we heard a couple non-conference teams in the past couple weeks. You start thinking about. We're going to talk about what needs to happen and what kind of questions are there for the basketball team. I had a really good conversation with Mike DeCourcy on Banner Monday. I'd like to promote that for what you've done with Banner Monday. But, boy, he brings a really good, nuanced position that takes away a little bit of our cream and crimson glasses at times and really makes us sit back and focus on what actually happens. But he was talking about the name, image, and likeness possibly being a benefit for a team like Indiana, who is a blue blood, and there's might be a lot of opportunities that you can't use as a coach necessarily, or a booster can't promise something, but people aren't, they know what is going on. So I was thinking a lot about that, recruits might say, yeah, Indiana, there might be more opportunity for me, and that might be a draw. So been thinking, a lot about that. And just in general, hoping that the development of the Indiana Hoosiers is going on despite the stay-at-home orders and those things. And then recruiting. You brought up the recruiting in your banner moment. What kind of recruiting is going on? Everyone's doing Zoom meetings, so that's the consistent probably. But how are you identifying talent? I think the Zoom meetings are great with people you've already identified and built a relationship and had on campus, because then you can continue the message. But recruiting is about finding those hidden gems or finding those talents while you're sitting on the gym floor or off the side of the gym floor in recruiting. We're going to see who really works it and who has the connections to identify those freshmen and sophomores that need to be recruited for Indiana. So that has me thinking about all of that, and it's always good to think Indiana basketball in the off season.
Absolutely. Okay. And to my right.
Analyzing players, finding every wrinkle. He hasn't ever hosted, never lifted a finger. He's got all the
Well, let me quickly add just one thing about this.
Dude just interrupted his own jingle.
It's easy to enjoy watching guys enjoy themselves.
Ryan, what is your rant this week?
Really? With that tag at the end? I thought the biggest news of the week came earlier today when Devontae Green announced on Twitter that he was a college graduate. I think that it's congratulations, Devontae. It's easy to forget that that's what this is all about. I mean, for the vast majority of guys who play college athletics, the degree is the goal. And I'm sure Devontae is going to continue to play and move on, but he'll always have that Indiana degree. And this is a kid who, used his skills to be able to get that college degree from a really good university. As somebody who took a long time to get their degree and had some ups and downs and speaking of myself now, not Devontae, but had some ups and downs and took a long time to get their degree. That's a really meaningful moment in somebody's life, and it's something that nobody can ever take away from you. And there's a reason I sprung for the really expensive frame for my diploma back here, and it's because it was a struggle and it took a long time, and it's something that, again, I'll always have that, and he'll always have his diploma. And we get caught up in recruiting rankings, we get caught up in statistics, and we get caught up in wins and losses. But that's a young man who just did something really big for his life by graduating college. So congratulations, Devontae, and we know you'll do big things moving forward.
Absolutely. Thanks for saying that, Ryan. That's good stuff. All right, here's what we're going to talk about this week. First off, the biggest question facing all of sports. When are they going to be back? We'll kind of discuss if we got any insight on that this week. And then we're going to talk about the biggest questions facing your Indiana Hoosiers on the court heading into next season, whenever that season happens. And then, as we always do, we will answer your questions. So all of that is coming this week on Assembly Call Radio. Before we get to that stuff, a quick reminder to go support our friends at Home Field Apparel, homefieldapparel.com. You can use that promo code Assembly20. It will always give you 20% off. Get, the Bison logo, get all the football t-shirts that they released last year. They've got, 8, 9, 10 basketball themed shirts there. I mean, they have everything for the IU fan in your life. If you're looking for gifts, looking for something for yourself, go to homefieldapparel.com and use that promo code Assembly20. And then if you want to support a local food bank, go to foodpantries.org or feedingamerica.org. That will help you find a food pantry in your area that you can support, because obviously a lot of people are dealing with food shortages, food insecurity, and so anything that we can do there to help them out, we certainly want to do. So it's foodpantries.org and feedingamerica.org. All right, guys. So in our next segment, as I said, we're going to talk about the biggest questions facing the team on the court. But the biggest question facing all sports teams is just when are we going to get on the court or the field of play or the diamond or whatever. And, Ryan, it felt like this week we started to see some movement in this direction. The Korean Baseball League is back playing. There are no spectators, but that's actually on TV. So there's televised baseball without fans that people seem to be excited about. So we've at least got that. I read that MLB is expected to have a proposal soon for returning at some point this summer. Now, that's going to have to be approved by the Players Association, so it's a first step, not a final step. But you're starting to see some of these things, rumblings of a plan for the NBA to resume. I think what's going to be interesting for college sports is they're obviously going to have to watch what the pros do. And I think the pros will take the lead on actually getting back on the fields of play, because colleges have a lot of other things to think about, getting students back on campus, faculty back on campus. Does that need to happen before you play? There's a lot of complications for the colleges that the pro leagues don't have. And you saw from a college perspective, the Big Ten extended the suspension of organized team activities through June 1st. Previously, it had been, I think, the first week in May, so they pushed that out.
It was the right call.
Yeah, and, the NCAA released this core principles for sports to resume document that I kind of read through, and it made my head hurt because it kind of said stuff, but it didn't really say stuff. So it was, kind of what you would expect from the NCAA. I mean, at least they're putting something out there. I don't want to make too much light of it, but it didn't really provide a whole lot of firm stuff. There was no definitive answers. Yeah, it was still, it was parading itself as firm, but it was still kind of soft. And so I guess my question to you is, these are some of the things I've seen. How close are we to getting some sports back? Because for college basketball fans, I think we want to see the NBA back. How are they going to go play basketball? And is there going to be some kind of model there at all, even just for how they handle stuff on court, that college basketball will be able to do that'll make us feel better about the season starting somewhere close to when it's supposed to?
Right. So I talk for my day job at the Big Lead. I talk to people from leagues all over the place. There is growing pessimism that there will be fans in the stands before 2021. I mean, that's just because
that makes sense.
Most of the experts are coming out saying, look, just like the flu, we're going to get hit again with this in the fall when everybody's inside and colder, and it's colder and we're going to be around each other. That's going to bring this back up again. And so if it's going to start spreading again, you don't want to put fans in the stands and then all of a sudden be like, all right, no, you got to get out. It's just going to be we're not going to have fans until 2021. Now, that's not definitive, but that's what most experts are projecting. And the sports leagues are catching on to that and saying, well, then there's no point in let's have one plan for how we do things, and then we'll start bringing people back. I think the other thing is, in all of these proposals, and for work, we've read through some of them, all of them, the bottom line is there needs to be widespread testing, because you cannot have one player bring it in and then give it to the entire team. If one person is, gets sick and has to leave, it causes a huge ripple effect. So I think that's another aspect we have to look to. So far, all we've gotten are projections of there's no definitive dates other than the UFC and then golf, which are sports where the UFC, I don't know how they're going to do it with making sure everybody is safe. They seem to think that they can do it. But team sports and things like that, when you're practicing among a bunch of people and then playing among a bunch of people, it's going to be harder, obviously. The travel is also going to be more difficult as well. Having to travel and send an entire team somewhere, that's going to be more difficult. So I think that it's going to, you see the UFC coming back, you see Korean baseball playing. Those are sort of different than what is going to be happening in America and what is going to be happening with more team-centric sports. So we'll see. What we've talked to with a lot of these leagues is people, they have to have a plan, because all of a sudden, if things get better, they got to be able to rev in. This baseball plan that has sort of been leaked and discussed for a while is all dependent on X, Y, Z, and 10 different factors that we haven't hit yet. So they're saying we could start in mid-June, but we'd have to go a long way between now and then to change the way this is going for that to happen. So they're setting up plans, but then, these are plans that could easily start to be moved back down the road. As far as colleges go, I don't think you need to have students on campus for games to be played, because as long as kids are enrolled, they could be doing distance classes and all of that stuff. With a lot of people finish their semesters over Zoom or Skype or whatever. I think that's possible. But at the same time, I think that the appearance of that is it's not safe to be on campus for the regular students, but we need these athletes to be on campus is not something the NCAA wants, especially if it's pushing this model that they're just regular students, And so I think that there are all those factors in. Right now, my industry has been decimated by this. I want to get back to playing games and doing all of this as soon as possible. I'm not super optimistic that we're just going to flip a switch and it's going to be fine. I think this is a long-term thing, and they're going to have to figure out creative ways to do it.
Nor should we flip a switch, and nor should we be lulled into a false sense of security that everything's okay. I love seeing that, we're starting to see some businesses come, and I think doing that in a controlled way with a plan makes some sense. I just really worry, and Coach and I were talking about this before we went live, that people are getting the message that everything is okay when it's not. Like you still need to be as careful as you were before. We don't want to go down that road with this conversation, but Coach, how are you handling not having sports? I mean, I know not well, but like, what are you doing?
Well, it's people can say that it's not that important, but for us who are sports fans, it's just part of our lives and it's what we do. Some people go out and hunt, and some people work on cars for hobbies. Our hobbies, sports, and it's been taken away. And the thing that I can add to Ryan is the sports leagues were ahead of this and knew and had information, and then they were the first ones to pull the plug on their own economic situation and shutting down the Big Ten tournament to NCAAs before a lot of the stuff went national with the task force and all of those things. So you have to think that the sports leagues, the NCAA, the NBA, they really have a grasp on this and are going to do what's best. And yet they have to plan ahead, because if things are okay, you need months advanced planning to change the baseball league to 3 divisions and travel and all those things. And then the question becomes, as Ryan brought up at the end, what's the NCAA want to do image-wise? Because I think you can bring athletes back without students, but you are sending the signal that they are there for money. And if you're going to play without fans, college has another choice that it's kind of hard, because that's a moneymaker. Colleges need fans more than the pro leagues do. But you still get some revenue if you play, and you get the television revenue with no fans. And so do you need that? And you can, basketball is in I think a better shape, college basketball, because you have 13 players, let's say 20, 25 people personnel. You could put them up at a hotel. You could have testing. You could bring them into a gym, and even travel. I would suggest travel day of the game. Ryan was a big suggestion last year of Archie Miller doing things different of, travel the morning and travel back, so you don't have to stay in a hotel. You don't have to go out. Those are things that are more likely for a small rostered team in basketball. And basketball has another, I think, plus, and maybe this is just hopeful because it's such a big part of what we do, is they can delay it a month or two and not really, lose a lot. So it's a late November, early November start now, but they used to start late November. They can condense it some, or even push the tournament back a little bit if they had to, depending on venues and things like that. And so basketball has time. Where baseball and Major League sports don't at this point. So it'll be interesting to see how those factors play out.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to add to, as you said, Coach, that the sports were the first thing they knew before everybody else. And there's a reason for that. Sports were in touch. The sports leagues were in touch with people, high-ranking medical personnel, whether it's federal or not, with the federal government or not. I'm not really sure the answer to that, but we were leaked to in early March, maybe the second week of March, that they were told that sports aren't coming back before June 1st. Major league sports aren't coming back before June 1st. And that was the first week of March. So if you're looking at that and you're saying, look, the NFL is doing everything remote. Major League Baseball hasn't even started. NBA shut down. NHL shut down. They knew back then this was going to be this bad and that they were going to have to shut down. Now, and what they were basically told is best case, you're June 1st. So we're looking like some people want to start things back up again, but they were told best case is June 1st, and we're not at the best case. So it'll just be interesting to see how this all plays out and how it works. those projections from the beginning appear to be pretty spot on, that best case would have been June 1st. So those people clearly know what they're talking about, and these leagues know what they're talking about. And if you're hearing from a league like the NBA, like we're nowhere near starting, they're not just doing it blithely. They want to be back. There's a lot of money to be made. They just know that they can't allow a situation where they have a major star get sick. Then everybody would be on them for, why did you ever start up again? It's a PR disaster. So these leagues know what they're doing, and they're talking to the right people and are trying to figure out ways to get it done. And I'm sure college athletics is the same way. The other thing about college athletics we didn't mention, it's going to be very regional. What if one state doesn't have any cases and opens up, and another state doesn't? Are they going to have to change the schedules around so that certain teams can play and certain can't? Or is a college basketball or college football team going to have to maybe train in another state while taking remote classes? There are 1,000 possibilities, and nobody's come up with a real solution yet, at least not publicly.
Okay, well, we'll keep following this, and hopefully we get better news as we move forward. All right, coming up, let's look ahead to next season, whenever that might be, now that we pretty much know who will be on the roster. What are the biggest question marks facing Indiana, and which ones are the highest leverage in terms of determining how good this team can be? We will break it all down next. Stick with us on the December Call. All right. Hey, everybody. Nice to see so many of you here in the chat mob.
There's a bunch of, the PR, and I know there's a talk in the chat room now about some universities saying they're definitely opening up and some doing a 5-step plan like Indiana. As an educator myself, it's going to be a concern. I'm going to bring it up with our union. Yes, young people are likely not to be deathly ill with COVID if they get it, but there's a bunch of people who are 53 years old like me who are teaching and in a confined space, as we see in meatpacking places and nursing homes and prisons. When you get in confined spaces, that's why fans aren't going to be allowed. Yeah. It's not just so easy as saying, hey, we want things to go back to normal, let's go back and teach kids. I was told I'm going to have 30 kids a classroom, and I have a small classroom because of our enrollment situation for the junior class. So you have 30 kids, 49-minute classes. The universities are going to go through that whole thing. So, Purdue and those schools that are beefing up and saying they're going to be back, that's great. But they're going to have to restructure how they do things. And they're going to have a huge plan on smaller class sizes, alternate class times. I'm going to make the suggestion that I only need to meet with my students 2 times a week. I'll meet with them all at once in the little theater and give my lectures that way, and then do a blended thing and to sacrifice those daily meetings. But it's got to be different, in my opinion. And I don't mean to be alarmist or anything, but I get a cold, I get the flu almost every year because we have 540 kids, and some schools have 2,000, 3,000 kids walking the halls, and the carrier part of that. So that's part of that. I urge people to watch what happens in confined spaces. The barber, those things are going to be easier to come back. The confined spaces and major people in confined spaces, how that plays out. And I hope it's fine, and we can really roll this thing out and have sports back. I'm not trying to cancel sports, but it is a concern of mine as someone who works in that environment. Yeah,
I would say that the thing that I think a lot of people are missing on this is, if everybody goes out and interacts, everybody will get it, and it kills a very small percentage of people. So we all get it. We'll all be immune to it. It'll be over fast. The problem is if everybody is out trying to pass this around, not wearing masks, not social distancing, all that, you're going to encounter people who have to live or visit their immunocompromised or elderly family, might have an immunocompromised kid, but they have to work as an essential worker. They have to, go to the store, things like that. If you pass it to them and then they go home, where in a situation they can't isolate from those other people, they can give it to them. And then you're going to get a lot more people getting very sick. So I think that's something that a lot of people are missing when they're saying, let's just all spread it around and kick it and we'll be over it. That's the problem. Until we can test everybody consistently and, get antibody tests, that's going to be very
important. Treat. That's the other thing. Of course. That's the big thing that we're missing is some kind of treatment. That's why everybody's scared when you get it, because it's like you're just at the mercy of what this is going to do to you instead of knowing that there's some kind of reasonable treatment. That will
we also don't know the long-term effects of it. We don't know how you're going to feel in 3 years or whatever. So I also would say that, I've been very much of the when you open things slowly and don't just run out and all that stuff and wear masks and all that. But I mean, and people say, well, yeah, you're still working, you can afford it. My industry has been decimated by this. I mean, there are mass layoffs at every outlet. There's no advertising revenue. I mean, we are getting crushed. I totally want to go back to normal. We were, the industry was actually doing pretty well. It's gone now. And so I trust me, I'm on that train of, I would much rather be back to normal. I just want to make sure we do it safely, because I feel like if we open up again and then have to shut down again, it's going to be 10 times worse than it was this time, because all those businesses that held on maybe a little bit to get back open will then just bag it and shut down. So I just want to make sure we're doing this right. That's my only.
Yeah, it's a right balance.
Concern.
I know I'm going to have to go back in the fall, but what's the right balance? What's the procedure? How are we doing it to minimize? But fellas and people in the chat room, I've lost a couple basketball mentors to this thing. Older gentlemen, I get it, but those were ones that I sat down when I was at their schools doing some work and talked basketball. Hall of Fame, Ed Siegel, Ed Schilling's Jr.'s father passed away. We lost an athletic director at North Central. Someone my age, athletic director, was on a ventilator for 2 weeks and survived. A basketball sectional had 17 people come down at the same time we were winning a basketball sectional in the state of Indiana. This one was in Indianapolis. So, it's hit me a little bit close in the education world. And when you lose some guys that were just, beer and a cheeseburger guy talking X's and O's, it hits you hard. And you know that's going to continue to happen, and you can't prevent it. But it does need to be a balance. It can't just be a seesaw, closed and wide open, because, all people, those are some very special people that we lost.
Yeah, no, it just, I think that the basic message that I think that I've gotten from sports people and everything like that is we need to be doing way better than we are right now as far as our response to this, whether it's statewide, federal, whatever. We need to be doing way better than we're doing to get to a point where sports can come back. Sports are, as far as the grand scheme of things that people are concerned about, those are way behind everything else. And by the way, that's the key to my livelihood. It's one of the most important to me. But at the same time, I agree. You got to get other things ramped up before you can start worrying about athletics.
Sports are a distraction, sports are a diversion, all that stuff. Sports is also a symbol of this to a lot of people.
Yep.
Just like
Agreed.
It was when it first happened, when the sports leagues went away, everybody was like, "Oh man, this is serious." And so I think when the sports leagues come back, it's going to give people something to watch, but it's also going to give people some hope that we're starting to, see a silver lining here. It's hard because there's extremes on both sides. There's false equivalencies being made. There's misinformation that's out there, and it's a really difficult thing. And everybody's got a little bit of a different perspective and different personal connection to it. And it's tough. I think a lot of people who are engaged, you can look in the chat mob. People have different perspectives on it, and they're all well-meaning, but
nobody's for the most part.
And I'll say the balance is, I know people who've lost their jobs and their businesses too, and it's a balance on both sides, and that's not good either. So it's just a balance. But as we're talking sports, it's just going to be the last thing that comes back, and probably rightfully so, as much as it's important to all of us. Maybe more so to you, Ryan, because that's your job. And so we can hope for the best.
What I would say to people is, I think everybody's doing the best with what information they have. And, data lags behind, there's all kinds of, so you'll see data one day that looks good, and then the next day it's bad. And, it's one of those things that everybody's doing the best they can, whether it's governors or whatever, or just normal people. They're doing the best with what they have. I would just say, I think that, to help out everyone else, err on the side of caution when you're out and about and doing stuff like that. I'm not an expert. That's just me saying that. And I just, be safe. That's the other thing, don't just blindly run out and, think that this isn't a big deal. It's definitely a big deal, and we all want you to be safe. So can we get some basketball, please?
All right,
let's do that.
Let's talk basketball. Scott in the chat.
We got that out of the way.
I mean, it's, plus, we should probably hop on calls outside of this, because we all haven't had a chance to talk about this yet either. So, all right.
Yeah, I think that just kind of exploded out to all the people in the chat. Scott, of course, in there. Apologize. We haven't really discussed this on air.
But it does, I mean, it affects
it's just kind of
sports, and it affects what we love, college basketball. So
this was not on the run sheet. It just kind of all came out. So
yeah. It does, because we don't want to see the delay of the basketball season.
Well, and I would say it feels good to talk about it. You feel less alone when you talk about it. So
yeah,
I think that was good for me, at least.
That is true. All right, we got about 45 seconds until we're going to start the next segment. I don't know why I did this, but I went through and pulled out the players saying my name, like
Jerod,
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 Jerod, Jerod.
I don't understand why everybody says my name differently. It's been like that my whole life.
Jerod.
Yeah.
Andy Bottoms.
And then you got Robert Johnson, president of the Andy Bottoms fan club.
There you go.
What are you going to do? Okay, let's get ready for segment 2. It is coming in 10 seconds. We didn't really game plan this, but that's okay. We got it on the run sheet.
Yeah.
So we basically know what we're doing. Okay, here we go. Ryan, you'll like this.
All right.
Hey guys, it's Gene Steratore, CBS officiating analyst and retired Big Ten basketball official. You know, I have never listened to the assembly call, and to be honest, I don't intend to. But if you listen, make sure you ignore anything Ryan says about officiating. He's really good from the seat of his pants, but I wouldn't trust him on the court with a whistle around his neck. Time has proven him wrong on virtually everything. Take care. We'll talk soon.
Gene Steratore, you are the man. That's all I have to say.
Wow. That is awesome.
By the way, he ad-libbed some of that, because you'll notice he went longer than the other people have done, because on Cameo, you only have like a certain number of characters. So I told him the basics, and he ad-libbed a bunch of the other stuff, like the seat of his pants and all that stuff.
Yeah, of course. Because he's done that before. Like, that's the thing. You know for sure he's done that before.
It was great. He got so into it. I loved seeing that. So, Gene Steratore, you rock, and we take back anything negative that might have been said about you on the show.
I don't think we ever singled him out specifically, did we? There were other guys.
There's certainly other guys that caught the ire more than him. So
his only bad games came in Wisconsin.
Well,
that's when he was only a bad official up at Wisconsin.
Well, they all are.
That's not the case. The refs would have called it.
Okay. Anyway, you're listening to the Assembly Call. You can find all of our content at our website. If you ever want to join the chat mob,
chat mobbers,
during one of our unedited live broadcasts, or watch those replays and see the between segment banner, check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. All right, I'm Jerod Morris here with Ryan Phillips, the coach Brian Tonsoni. Guys, let's talk about the biggest on-court question marks for next season. We know the biggest question mark overall is when is the season going to be played, but let's talk about the team on the court. And we went back and forth with some of these via email, some of the big question marks. And I think, frankly, I think what's more interesting about this conversation isn't what the question marks are, because I think a lot of them are pretty obvious, actually. I think it's which are the highest leverage ones. Like which ones, if they're answered in a positive way, will have the biggest impact on this team reaching their ceiling. So let's set the kind of the parameters first. I'll read out these questions, and then let me know if you guys have any new ones. And y'all in the chat mob watching live, let us know if you have any additional questions. But let me just go through these real quick and then get your reactions. Okay, question marks. Can Rob Fennessy be an above-average Big Ten point guard? Is Jerome Hunter ready to have a, quote, responsibility for production, be a guy that you count on for scoring? Can Christian Lander, a 5-star recruit, assuming he reclassifies, which we are for purposes of this discussion, be close to what DJ Carton, who was a high 4-star recruit, was for Ohio State before he transferred? And Carton averaged 24 minutes a game, 10.4 points, 3 assists, 2.8 rebounds, and 2.6 turnovers per game. He was obviously a year more advanced, but can Christian be somewhere in that vicinity? Can Race Thompson stay healthy enough to play 50% of the minutes? He played 31% last season and maintain his production. Will one of the non-Lander freshmen have a significant impact on the rotation? Does Archie stick with the big lineup theory during Joey Bronk's final season? Does Trace Jackson-Davis make a significant jump skill-wise? And is this the season we finally see Indiana's pack line defense make the jump to great or even elite? Now, the thing I want to get your guys' reaction on, we didn't include any questions for Al, Justin, and Joey. And to me, I feel the reason for that is we have a pretty good handle on what those guys are going to be. And none of them really project to be guys who can take major leaps. Now, maybe they can, but that's not necessarily something you would assume from their first 3 years. So we obviously need all of them to be solid, but I feel like they're more kind of, answers. Like we kind of know what we're going to get from them as opposed to question marks. And then Armand Franklin's another guy that we didn't mention, and he kind of projects as a guy who I think will take more of a leap as an upperclassman than a sophomore. So he'll have a role, but I just don't think he's a question mark that's going to move the needle either way. So your guys' reaction to that, and if you think that there are any question marks that we've missed here.
Well, I think number one that goes to, I mean, this is for every team, but it's not on the list, so we'll just add it. I think, and it's something that's really hurt this team the last 2 years, health. Can they stay healthy? And I know that's an obvious one, but we should mention it off the top. Is you lose Rob Fennessy for a certain amount of games. You lose, Race Thompson for a certain amount of games. You lose Jerome Hunter for a key road game. And I just think that health is the number one factor for this team because they faced it the last 2 years. You could say that for any team, but specifically Indiana struggled with it the last 2 years. I think that is number one question mark. Can you get through a season mostly healthy with your key guys so it doesn't, those breaks in the season don't stunt their development? As I think
that's a question for everybody. So
yes, it is, but I think that specifically for Indiana it matters so much because of the last two seasons.
And so overall, this roster looks poised to handle an injury or two better than maybe the rosters of before as well, because of the roster construction getting better, which it needed to. So yeah, you want the health, but I think it is there for some security.
All right. So of all these questions, which one do you think is number one? What is the highest leverage question here? Because I will tell you, for me, it's Rob Fennessy.
Yeah.
I think Rob Fennessy taking that next step as a junior, becoming at a minimum an above average guy. That means he's one of the, 6 best point guards in the league. If he can do that, I think it is huge for Indiana, and I think it's really and look, I mean, Lander may come and be a significant contributor, but I think Rob Fennessy's got to be a rock that you can count on for 30 minutes, that offensively and defensively what you're getting from him each game. I think that is the biggest question that, if it's answered in the affirmative, can really change what this team can do and how consistent they can be.
Yeah, I think there's two parts to this one. It's one is that, yes, Rob is certainly the most important part. Two, Indiana finally has a buffer behind that in Christian Lander. So if Rob Fennessy doesn't reach his potential, but you get Christian Lander in there and he's really good, it maybe softens that blow a little bit so Lander can come in and pick up some of the slack. The ideal scenario is to have both of them playing at a good level. I mean, so you can have them both as we've talked about, they can play on the floor at the same time. There's no question about that. So yes, I would agree that Rob becoming an above average Big Ten point guard, the guy that we've seen at times be very successful and be a great finisher, been able to knock down shots and play excellent defense. He needs to put that all together. If he can do that, this team's ceiling jumps considerably, especially in the Big Ten, where you need someone to lead every night against tough defenses, against physical defenses. You need somebody to be a leader on the floor. Rob needs to be that guy for this team.
Yeah, and the thing, Coach, I think heading into last season, I think we all would have thought that coming into this season, this wouldn't be as big of a question mark, and I think it's a little bit of a disappointment maybe in where Rob is in his development, but, could be some extenuating circumstances there with injuries and things that have happened to him. But this is not the conversation we expected to be having last offseason.
Well, and Rob's injury was there, and Rob needs to be tougher in those situations as well, as a combination of what happened to him and then maybe his response to that too. But you saw glimpses of it throughout the sophomore season, and he just seems to play really well against Michigan State. You can tell when he's playing well, he's really on attack mode on offense, and he's really a lockdown defender. But I will point out, the Big Ten's had some really good senior point guards that have been dominant in their own way. And I'm not saying that Rob Fennessy is going to be a Cassius Winston and Anthony Cowan and Xavier Simpson, but they all got better year after year after year, and they made progress. If he can be who Rob Fennessy is, and I'm not saying a Cassius Winston dominant player, but his potential can be reached, and we see that sophomore to junior growth. That makes Indiana really, really good because a point guard runs the offense, runs the pace that Archie Miller wants, and I think that's, and I think more like an Xavier Simpson comparison. I'd have to go back and look at the stats, but someone who can run the show, can get the pace going in the right way, and you saw glimpses of what Rob can do for this team, and he needs to make sure that he's making that progress and stay healthy as well. But that is such a key, because that makes everyone else a lot better when you have that point guard.
All right, Coach, what do you think is the second highest leverage question here?
I think I'm going to combine two, I think it's the elevation of
fair.
Hunter and Thompson. And okay, but
you got to
I
pick
think
one of those two guys.
I'm going to say Jerome Hunter because I think he's a scorer. Race does all the things already. If Race just comes back the way he was, he's going to help this team. But I think Hunter then, if you're making me pick, I think Hunter making that leap up to a double-digit scorer, a consistent three-point shooter, not just a couple nice shots, and the ability to score in the post and maybe get that ball off the drive gives something Indiana has been lacking. And so responsibility for production, I'll take Hunter. But I think Thompson is right there too. If he can elevate, you got two really good pieces who are bench players, because Indiana has all their starters, quote, coming back if they stay with the same starters, and all of a sudden now you have 6, 7, and a 5-star guard as number 8 or whatever. That's a pretty potent 8-person rotation, and you got other players that can fill in around it too. So I'll go with Hunter on that, although Thompson's a close in the next question.
I agree with you on Hunter, just because, again, it's, kind of, if he gets to that point, he's a guy who has 11, 12, 13 point per game potential. Now, I don't know if he'll get there. That's why it's a question mark. But if he can get there as an outside shooter, as a guy who can score maybe even at 3 levels, that really changes the complexion of this team and probably forces Archie's hand to make him a starter, which could really change some lineups. And we know, having watched this team operate with 3 non-shooters on the court for a long time, being able to get him on there with some versatility, that could really change the complexion of what this team could do. So I think that, to me, that's the second biggest question.
When Indiana played well, Devontae got hot and scored, and you're going to need a scorer. You're going to need that scorer, whether that's Lander, Fennessy, Durham, whoever. But Hunter has a chance to fill some of that role of the hot Devontae and the good Devontae.
Yeah. Here's the thing. You all know how much I love Race Thompson, think how much potential he has. But quite frankly, Jerome can do some things that nobody else on the roster can do, which elevates his importance, I think, and his ability to, as you said, potentially score at 3 levels. We saw him play some really good defense at times this year. That was where he struggled a little bit, but you saw him pick it up and figure it out and play some good defense. He can do that consistently at his size. He can guard several different positions. I also think a sort of sneaky, really important one is, does he stick with the big man, lineup? I mean, does he try and go with 2 big men, or does he try and go more versatile? I think that is really important, not just offensively, but defensively as well. Can these guys can you play the kind of defense Archie wants to play with 2 big guys who don't move particularly well? Or at least one left. So that's really interesting to me. I'm not sure if you can do that, even with another offseason of Joey Bronk in the system. I'm not sure if he can start next year. He's going to be a captain. You just have to assume that he's going to be one of them. So I guess that would be maybe even more than can Race Thompson stay healthy. I think that's incredibly important, because that has to do with, no matter who's in the lineup, how do you attack opposing teams and how do you defend them? I think is very, very contingent on what kind of lineups you put out there.
I agree. No, I think
there's a lot of wings on this roster.
Yep.
There's a lot of wing players on this roster. The freshmen need to develop some, so you don't know how much they're going to push, but you can go 3 wings and move it Justin down. Can Justin defend the 4? He's a great defender. Is he a great defender at the 3 or the 4, or can he do both? I didn't like it a whole lot to start, but I understand to get Bronk some minutes. And can you keep Bronk happy if you're going to play TJD a lot of minutes and Bronk just backs him up? That'll be an interesting question on what's that lineup consistently, because you got a lot of players that can play 1, 2, and 3, and you can play 3 guards.
Yeah, so I agree. I think kind of with the hierarchy we have here, where it's Rob and then kind of Jerome and Race, put them in an order, and then I think, Ryan, what you said about the bigs, and then to me, that's where the Lander question comes in. And the only reason to me that it's not higher is because I don't think it's as much of a question mark as it may seem. And the reason I say that is, as long as he reclassifies, I feel like we have a decent idea what we're going to get from him if we're realistic. Just looking at some other guys who have reclassified, who have been that level of recruit. Like, this guy is a 5-star for a reason. He's going to come in, he's going to play, he's going to produce, he's going to score some points, he's going to shoot it, and he's going to turn it over. And that's why DJ Carton, to me, was an interesting comparison for him. He's not just going to sit the bench. He's almost surely not just going to be a dud. but he's also probably not going to come and just totally take over, because he's a guy who should be a high school senior. So there's probably a cap on what he can give you. So, and maybe I'm looking at this wrong, but to me, I don't look at him as much of a question mark. If he comes and reclassifies, I feel like we have a decent idea of what he's going to give us. And hopefully that crescendos toward the end of the season and he's better toward the end. But, I feel like he'll give flashes of brilliance, another playmaker, make some really important plays, and have some ups and downs, and really struggle at the beginning of Big Ten play with physical play.
The only question for me on him is how much will he score early on? I feel like he'll be a great distributor. He'll have the vision. He'll set guys up. He'll, as you said, make some great plays and all that. The question is, how well will he score at the next level right away? Given his body type, he's underweight a little bit right now. He's a smaller guy. Meaning he has a slight build. I think that can improve. But he's also not enrolled in on campus now, working out. So you have to, that's really the only question mark for me. I think he's a guy who can play good defense. I think he's got great vision. I think he can push the ball like Archie wants to get up. The thing we've seen Archie yell at Rob Fennessy for not getting it up the court fast enough sometimes. He's not going to have that problem with Christian Lander. He's going to have to, in some cases with Lander, he's going to have to pull him back a little bit because Lander's going to attack when maybe there isn't something there, because he's used to attacking when there isn't something there and scoring and having or setting somebody up. So I think that's the only question mark for me with Lander. You're right. I think we know what kind of a player he is. It's just a matter of, as a freshman, will he, what level will he reach as a scorer? And we don't
pace
know.
Of play. Ryan, you're absolutely correct. My most exciting thing with Lander is not points per game. It is pace and assists. And if he can have and hone that to where he's not forcing the shot at the rim or not turning the ball over because he's going so fast, but if he can elevate everyone else, that makes Justin Smith better. You get Justin Smith out on the run and a point guard who can really get him in space to score. It lifts everyone, and I think Archie wants to play faster. Ryan, I think that is the key to Lander. The points can come from other places, and if we get both, then that's just that. To me, that's bonus.
So as we look at these other questions here, the freshmen, sure, one of them could come, and I'm sure one of them is, maybe a couple of them will play some minutes. I don't think any of those guys is going to be a difference maker as a freshman. You just usually don't see that from guys ranked there. Now, could one of them be OG Anunoby at the end of his freshman year? Maybe, but that is doubtful. I think the other two that are interesting.
Let me say this, Jerod.
Yeah.
Armand Franklin, how many games did he win by having just a burst off the bench? Notre Dame at least.
Yeah.
And maybe you can find one more. If each freshman finds a game or a game and a half, now all of a sudden you're looking at 19, 20 wins and maybe making, and that's that boost to go up into the 4 or 5 level. And one can shoot, one can guard, maybe win with a great defensive effort to jolt the team to play better defense. One is a heck of an athlete.
They just may find it harder to get minutes than
freshman.
Armand did.
You win one game.
I don't know if they'll get as many opportunities.
That's
as
true.
Armand
Here's
did,
the
but
thing.
You're right, though.
Not to talk over everybody, but that's what I do.
Because you never do that.
Yeah.
Let me just jump in real quick.
Here's the thing. You have 8 guys returning who have played in the system. I mean, and then, by the way, that's what Archie wants. That's what his system needs. You look at a school. I mean, the team that we often compare, the program we often compare Indiana to with the systems that it runs and Archie Miller and all that is Virginia. Virginia got good when it got guys in the system for long periods of time. And so that's what you've got right now. So the freshman, you're looking for, unless you're a superstar 5-star, your job as a freshman is to come off the bench, provide energy, maybe provide a lift here and there, 5 minutes, make a couple threes or play some defense or whatever.
Yeah.
But your job is to learn the system as a freshman, to get comfortable in that system. I would not be surprised if there was a red shirt out of this group. I don't know who, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if, like Villanova, like Virginia, like some of these other top programs that like to get old and stay old, they utilize that red shirt because it's a weapon you can use to get an extra year from a guy you think will be better as he's older. So I think that's a big thing with this is those freshmen, their job is to get comfortable so that when next year rolls around, they can be full-time, big-time contributors. Yeah. So this year, I think, is a situation where you're hoping that they make some impact. You're hoping that by the end of the year, like you said, Jerod, they could be an OG Anunoby or a Juwan Morgan. But if not, at least they're able to come on the court, feel comfortable in the system, and contribute bits and pieces here. Maybe it's not hitting a 3, but maybe it's making one more pass to the guy who does hit the three, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and team plays zone. Iowa tries to go with zone to slow down Indiana's offense. You put Leal out there, he's playing 4 minutes, hits 2 threes. That might be a difference. Or there's a particular player.
Don't adjust to Iowa's defense. Just go.
No, but I'm just trying to find areas where the players, there's someone who's really scoring, and you tell Trey, hey, no one's guarding him. Go out there and shut him down, and you change the course of the game with your 3 or 4 minutes on the court. They're not needed to be big-minute people, but they need to be ready for when their moment comes. And these are really good, talented guys like Armand was, and Armand was ready in the Notre Dame game, and you win a game. If that's just worth 2 or 3 wins because you have freshmen who will get 5 to 10 minutes in a big moment and really produce, that can be the difference between worrying on Selection Sunday and being a 5, 6, 7 seed, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, well said. Okay, we got a break coming up in our third segment. We're going to answer your questions. What do we think of player development under Archie Miller? How about coach development? To the extent that we can answer these questions and many more, we will in segment number 3. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. Okay.
My bad on picking Iowa. That was horrible because Iowa can't guard.
If we have to adjust to Iowa's defense, then just
they're all busting my balls in there, rightfully so. Chat mob, I take a bow. That was really bad off the cuff. But if there is a zone, some teams go 1-3-1 to change things up or whatever. A shooter can come in for 2 or 3 minutes. I'm not expecting any of those non-Lander 3 to really break into the top 8, is what I'm saying. But if they're called, they have aspects that can really help a team, and that is exciting.
And here's the other thing. It's a buffer against injuries. If you're going to the bench and getting Jordan Geronimo to replace Jerome Hunter for a game, you feel like, okay, that's a super athlete who has some skill you're bringing in. You're not bringing in a project. If Anthony Leal
injuries, poor play, lack of focus,
anything, yeah. I mean, just somebody who has to be on the bench for a long stretch. You're bringing Anthony Leal for Al Durham or something. You feel like, okay, that guy's not going to hurt you. He might actually help with his effort and maybe hitting another shot or something like that. So that's the thing about getting old is when you're bringing in pieces, they're not to replace your current pieces. They're to supplement them. So, hey, if somebody goes into a shooting slump where they've missed, 10 threes over 2 games, you can give them a break to maybe sit back and watch the game. You don't have to keep shoving them out there for 30 minutes every night.
Yeah. So I wanted to hit the last couple on there. So Trace making a jump skill-wise, the reason I don't think that's a big question is I just feel like it's kind of baked into the cake. Like, I feel like people are looking at this Indiana team, and we all are, as Trace Jackson Davis is a minimum second-team All-Big Ten guy, probable first-team All-Big Ten guy. He's a hard worker. I just expect him to be better and to be more consistent. So,
look, you look at his family situation too. His dad, having played in the NBA, knows that he's a smart guy. He knows that an NBA player at his size has to be able to step out and make a jump shot. So Trace is going to work on that. He knows he has to work on that. That's not something where he had to go get. I think that's the thing why he didn't even put his name in for evaluation. Although, I mean, this year, who knows, what kind of information you're going to have back and all that stuff, because you're not going to get to go to the combine and work out. But he already knows what he needs to work on. He needs to get a little more consistent defensively. I think he's a great defensive player, but I think just with footwork and things like that, get a little more consistent.
Not a great defensive player yet. He's instinctive and spectacular at times, and struggles with the fundamentals at other times.
That's what the NBA wants, though. Let's be honest. They want guys who block shots and are a threat.
He's got the tools to be a great defender.
Sure. So he needs to work on his footwork, and you're right, the fundamentals, but pretty decent lump of clay there to work from.
Yeah.
And he needs to be able to hit jumpers. That's the, and
here's why it's a really big question is because if he does and goes beyond, and Indiana's really tough to play, so you expect it and it is baked in, but my goodness, even better Trace Jackson Davis and his ability to play the 4, if he can shoot and guard the 4, would be really beneficial because then you can get Bronk some minutes at the 5. And I think TJD had to play the 5, was more efficient when he got the ball down low. But that stretches things as well. But it is a big question because, boy, if it happens, that gives us reason to be really, really optimistic.
Yeah, honestly, there's
Win.
there's a very strong possibility that Trace is the best player in the Big Ten next year. I mean, there's some guys who are good, but if Trace develops the way he should, and again, we don't know what it's going to look like next year. A lot of guys could return to school because of this and not having an offseason at school, could return pretty much looking exactly the same as they did this year with very little development. I mean, it's possible. We don't know how it's a guess. We don't know how that's going to look. But if Trace develops the way he's capable of, there's a solid chance that he's the best player in the Big Ten.
I mean, he could be an All-American. And, I think Coach,
for sure.
You do make a good point. I mean, if that really does happen, that is going to change some things. I mean, that's why these are all questions. I mean, shoot, if all these questions are answered in the affirmative, Indiana's going to be in the Final Four. You know what I mean? But as we know from history, probably half of these will be answered in a way that we don't like, and the other ones will be, and who knows, maybe Justin or Al or one of those guys takes a jump that we don't expect. The last one, and this one is kind of hard because everything else is kind of lumped in to this, is this the year that we see the pack line take the jump? Because you guys have alluded to the age, kind of the institutional knowledge of the defense now. This is the fourth year. It's been really inconsistent, and I know it was a top 30 defense last year. I don't know. I think if you kind of just look at the sentiment of all of our post-game shows and certainly look at the rankings in the Big Ten where they were 8th in raw, defensive efficiency, this didn't feel like a top 30 defense to me, even though it was. I mean, it was by the numbers, but it was very up and down, inconsistent. It abandoned Indiana at important times. If the defense next year really feels like that, if it's a top 20 defense, top 2 or 3 in the conference, and you're finally playing the way we thought, well, that's going to have a big impact too. And a big part of that is Trace's development and Race being able to play more minutes and Rob Fennessy being the point guard we want. So this probably doesn't really fit the theme of the questions that we're asking here, but it is a big question in my mind because it's something I thought we would see last year. The numbers were better. I just didn't think it quite passed the eye test. And if it does next year, it's obviously there's still a lot of room for Indiana to grow on that end. Even though we talk a lot about the offense, they can still get better and more consistent defensively. So is this the year we see it come together? I hope so, because that's what we're building this team around. So
I think the problems with the defense were personnel driven more than scheme driven. And I know you like the pack line or don't like the pack line, right? But you have people, if you're a pack line, you're going to hedge. And we had players who weren't hedging correctly and weren't able to do that. And so maybe Archie needed to make a change there in philosophy within the pack line. But it's a top 30 defense. But the personnel is getting better in what he wants to do, and not only physically but mentally too. Players that are buying into playing defense, like Race Thompson. I thought Jerome Hunter got that mindset before. I think the freshmen coming in have a defensive mindset, and so there's physical attributes and mental attributes that are needed to make the pack line perfect. And if it was a top 30 in year 3, you would hope that it even gets higher. And so that, obviously, again, we want these questions to be answered in the affirmative. But I can see it happening, and I think that's another good question.
Yeah, and Joel says the top 30 defense can win a banner, and this is true, and I think that's borne out. Right, but your offense has to be elite, and so that's the thing is, we know Archie wants to build around the defense, and Coach, I agree. I think personnel was an issue and an inability to consistently adapt to the personnel on behalf of the coaching staff. That all kind of, it was like a vicious cycle at times. So again, I'm bullish on the defense, just like I was last offseason. I thought it would get better. I think with another year of experience in the system, another year of roster management to get more guys in that seem to fit the system, I definitely think that it's going to be better. And you can see when it operates well, as it did at times, it's great, and it's lockdown, and it's fantastic. So that is, I just mean to say, it's still a high leverage question that there's a world where Indiana's a top 10, top 5 defense next year. That could happen if some of these questions are answered in a good way. So
it's worth
I just
noting,
hope we live
Jerod,
in that world.
It's worth noting, Jerod, that the other thing about what you're seeing with the roster is you're not seeing anybody sign with Indiana or like, how are they going to fit? As we've seen with the previous regime, it's a high level, like 3-point shooting team or whatever, and then you'd sign somebody who doesn't shoot threes, and you're kind of like, how are they going to fit in the offense? Like, you see year by year, you're seeing the recruits being brought in. You're like, oh yeah, he's going to fit in this way and he can do these things. And, he's athletic enough to play the pack line and recover. And you're just starting to see year by year, you can see the fit with the players they're bringing in. And I think that's very important. You're bringing in players who fit the system or who at least have the ability to be molded to fit the system, as opposed to people where you're just like, that's just not going to work. You're not recruiting anybody where you're looking at it like, oh yeah, he's going to transfer in a year.
Okay. And of all the recruits Archie has had, who is the one that kind of fit the least, that you kind of scratch your head a little bit and you're like, boy, that's going to be an interesting fit.
Fit the least?
Yeah, because I think you're right. Like, a lot of guys do fit, but the one that you were like, boy, how is he really going to fit into the way?
Not including the first class. I'm not going to include the first class because that was the leftover.
Well, no, but that's the guy that I'm talking about. I mean, I'm talking about Demezi. Like,
oh no, I'm not talking about that. I was talking about the first class.
Oh yeah, no,
yeah.
Archie's actual recruits.
The answer is Demezi. I mean, it's Demezi because he didn't move his feet very well. We actually saw him. I thought last year he played better on defense.
His defense got a lot better last year,
way better,
noticeably.
And he was a good rebounder too.
Yeah,
but he didn't fit the offensive system because he hunted shots from the outside, wasn't a penetrator. It just looked awkward. And the other thing, he wasn't strong with the ball. And Miller, in Miller's offense that reduces tempo a bit, you can't turn the ball over. And he had very weak hands. He would let the ball bounce out of his hands a lot. I just think that was the guy where you look at it. And I said it when we did his recruiting thing. I said, he's going to take him a couple years to become a top level, to become a college player. I think he was behind.
And who knows what he would have done, with his last 2 years. But I think he's, as we've talked about before, I think he's in a better spot.
He's in a much better spot. I think he picked a great school to go to, and I think he's going to have a real shot to develop there. So
yeah, the other guy. Well, I just want to say real quick, Coach. The other guy that would kind of fit this discussion is Joey Bronk.
Yes,
a little bit defensively, and yet I understand why Archie brought him in, because I think it was more of a locker room pickup. And obviously he can do some things offensively, but I think he wanted toughness, leadership, that kind of grit. That Joey Bronk brought in the Minnesota game that helped us win that game at home. So. That was not a perfect fit defensively for an Indiana big, but I still think it made sense at the time given the options available.
Well, and I think it's worth noting too, depth up front was an issue entering that season. And with that, the way that roster was constructed, depth up front was an issue. And I think that you get a guy from Indianapolis who was an IU fan, wanted to go to IU. There's a lot there, and you're just like, we need depth up front. We're taking that guy, and we'll figure out the fit later. But as far as actual recruits,
here's a question.
High school recruits,
yeah, go, Coach.
Here's a question that I think, and we coaches are stubborn in our system, and one of the things that does Archie become a little less stubborn. He wanted to play 11 guys, and that didn't work. And then Indiana, I think, got a little better when they shortened the rotation. Then there was mentioned in the chat mob too, when he made it finally after the Michigan game, he made a little bit of an alteration at times on flat hedging instead of high hedging. A little bit. We still didn't play that well. At times we still stuck with it, but it seems like I know for a fact when you have your system, you want to stick to your system, and you're going to coach your kids into your system. And one of the last things you do sometimes is say, okay, maybe we need to go to a different direction as a coach. That's one of the failings. And Jeff agrees with me in the chat mob. That's one of the negatives that we have with coaching. And I think that's a big growth in Archie's development as a coach too. Is you might have to in the Big Ten with great coaches and great people make more adjustments within your core philosophy. Not go away, not change your philosophy, because that doesn't work. You got to be who you are, but there's some nuance changes that you can have, and that would be a growth in Archie to help him be better. If he needs to. And
to a certain extent, you've got to be stubborn to build a new culture and to install a new system. And I get it. And that it's a difficult balance to try to have. And coach, I think you're going to be more willing and more enthusiastic about adjusting when you trust the guys on the court. And I think there has been a noticeable lack of trust from coach to player and player to coach through the first 3 years. It's gotten better each year, but you still kind of see it. And so hopefully in year 4, we see some of that start to get better. All right.
We're taking up a ton of times.
Yeah, but there's
going to be no time for AC After Dark. We just got to go right in.
There's always time for AC After Dark. Come on.
Not for me.
You haven't been here for AC After Dark in a while. The people they come here with expectations when you're on the show.
Dinner's being made. I can't. I can't
man.
Hey, man, it's the timing of the show. You want to do it now?
Brian's
earlier.
being stupid again.
Fine. Okay, let's do this.
Oh, by the way, everybody should check out the Titus and Tate episode with Cody Zeller that just came out, the podcast. It's very good. Cody tells some great stories.
He does.
That are IU relevant.
Yes, they are. Okay, let's do this.
Hey, this is Deron Davis. And what's the only thing better than dominating a Duke big man in the post? Is celebrating with friends afterwards. Join Jerod, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the Assembly Hall call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you, Duran. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. I'm Jerod Morris. I'm here with the coach Brian Tonsoni and Ryan Phillips. Remember that you need to be subscribed to our email newsletter. We send out a weekly IU news roundup, even during the offseason, and after every game. Once the games start again, we send out a detailed post-game analysis. Just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. That's IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. All right, guys, time for the mailbag. All these questions submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community, which you can learn more about at assemblycall.com/community. We had like 15 people sign up this week, which is really cool. Coach is doing some great coaches corners in there. So if you're feeling the need for some IU basketball community, go check us out at assemblycall.com/community. I say all the questions were submitted there, but Jay just dropped us a question here in the chat like 5 minutes before, and I suppose since he has theme music, we'll answer it.
It's not that good, but it's not that bad. It's Jay's mediocre question.
Truly mediocre, this question. What's the lineup that you're most looking forward to seeing next season? Coach?
I'll take it.
Okay,
oh,
Ryan?
Okay, Coach, go ahead. Oh, okay.
No. This is not...
Yeah, let Coach
go. Ahead,
go.
Ryan.
Let Coach go. Let Coach go.
This is not a starting lineup, but this is one I want to see play together. Lander, Fennessy, Hunter, Race, and TJD. That might be our best all-around lineup, but I think you have to honor L and Justin as seniors and give them the priority. And I think talk to Joey about backing up TJD. That would be my suggestion.
That seems like the highest ceiling lineup, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like if everything goes well and all these guys develop, just given talent and ability and how flexible they could be. You know, you're a little short at the guard position, you know, with those two, but feels like you could do a lot with those guys if they all develop. So I agree. That would be a fun one.
Here's my fantasy lineup, just for fun, would be Lander, the three other freshmen, and Trace Jackson Davis running. I think that offense would be a blast to watch. It'd be hot. They all know each other except for Geronimo.
Dumbass.
And Geronimo is. Now, I'm not saying for the key part of the game. I'm saying I look forward to seeing those guys get on the floor together. I think it would be fun. I've seen Trey Galloway and catch lobs from Christian Lander. I've seen Trace play with Christian Lander. You've seen these guys play together.
That's
and
true.
They're so much fun to watch. They know each other so well because they played together for so long on the AAU circuit. I would love to watch them play at Assembly Hall together.
All right.
Once,
the high school connection. Well,
yes,
I'll grant that to you. Okay.
Because Trace is probably going to be gone after 1 year. You're not going to, it's not like they can do that as junior when Trace is a junior. I want to see that next year. I think it'd be fun.
Okay. All right. We'll go with that. All right. From Patrick, what is your player development grade across all 3 years for Archie and his staff? And we've talked about this off and on at different times. There's been some ups. There's been some downs. The shooting hasn't developed like you want. You know, you see a guy like Juwan Morgan who really takes some strides. Some other guys that kind of feels like didn't. I mean, Coach, if you had to give the player development a grade, what grade are you giving it?
I'm probably giving it a B- right now. I think, Morgan is the plot positive. Maybe Devontae Green not reaching his potential is the balancing on the negative end. And time is part of that too, getting your players in and working with them. But I think it can be better, and I think it needs to be better from year to year. But I don't know that I've seen great development, but I don't think it's been poor.
On the plus side for Archie, I think Al has developed. I think he's gotten better every year. He's improved as a shooter. Al's an interesting guy because he was the 230th ranked recruit. By any measure, you have gotten more out of Al Durham than you ever dreamed of, but he's a starter at Indiana, so you get measured against, Victor Oladipo and Steve Alford and like all these other guys. But it's like, given where Al was recruited, he's really developed. I thought you saw Robert Johnson take some really good strides his senior year in certain respects. Justin Smith, I think he's gotten better in some areas, but he's also just kind of produced more because he's played more minutes. I think we'd all like to see a little more development from him. So B- seems fair, I think. Ryan, if you're going to get a B-, you've got to have some success stories there. And I do think that there have been some.
Yeah.
Okay.
C+, B-. But again, he's got to get his players that he knows the type of player and how to develop them. I think that's the key. And so you give the guy a break on that a little bit. I think the physical development has been good, but as far as like all around rounding out skills, it needs some work. And I think that
that's
Rob
where
Fennessy
is important, because that's a guy that has to develop. Yeah.
I was just saying Rob Fennessy is going to be his test case because that's a kid he wanted, identified, really, got along well with, and was, on the same page with. Can he bring him in and turn him into his potential guy? We haven't seen that yet. There's not a lot of consistency. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right.
But the buck stops at the head coach. The head coach is the one who's responsible for it all, and had a coaching change in the player development area as well. So, yes, those are good reasons, and you can make some excuses, but Archie needs to be at an A going forward in player development.
Okay, well, that leads to the next question, Coach, from Lee. To tie with that earlier question, how do you rate Archie and his staff's development over the first 3 years? Would you guys both take a crack at this one? We got about 2 minutes left. Coach, you go first.
I think it's been gradual. It's been slower than I thought it would be. I thought things would happen a little bit faster from Archie's success at Dayton. And I've maybe made too many excuses and reasons that, the changeover was so different from a Crean-style team to an Archie. I think that's a valid reason, but there are no excuses. The progress from over 500 and no tournament to NIT to NCAA possibly this year is okay, but it's not Indiana basketball, and I'm sure Archie would say the same thing. If you're any kind of competitor and you're leading a program like Indiana, it's time to get it going, and it's time to get it going right. So I think it's been okay development, but it needs to be on, really focused and hitting all marks going forward.
I'm kind of giving them an incomplete because I want to see what they do in their fourth year. I think that there were enough roster issues as far as guys that didn't fit the system on the roster that you kind of needed to give them a chance where they've got a couple recruiting classes and they've gotten older to really see what they can do. It's been a very slow burn, this development. At some point, you got to ratchet that up another step and improve exponentially, not just take gradual steps. If you're taking gradual steps, it's going to take you 10 years to get to a national title. You've got to at some point make a jump. I think what we've seen so far, it's kind of an incomplete development. You're starting to get where they want to get to, and you feel like this year is a year where they got to show something. They've got their players. They got to stay healthy, obviously, but they've got to show some development improvement.
Joel wants to know when the new name, image, likeness rules take effect, will Assembly Call Radio be paying any current players? If any current players want to hop on Cameo, we would be happy to pay them. If we're allowed to, we would be happy to pay them to.
Yeah, we're gonna have to hire a lawyer to look through all those rules.
Yeah, we got to make sure that we can. But if we're allowed to, we will. So the answer is yes.
Hey, just fire a coach because I'm a booster, and then you can pay him all you want. Just
because we got.
I'll take it for the team.
Yeah, we got to keep adding to our catalog of player drops. Okay, that's going to do it for us on this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thank you to Bob Thompson for producing a lot of the music that you hear on the show. And thank you for listening. We will talk to you again next Thursday night. Until then,
take it from me, Roman Langford. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Here I come. This is Stunt Sony.
Nice to hear from Romeo there.
Nice to hear from Romeo. Very nice to hear from Romeo.
Is that a newer one?
Yeah. We've got a few. I haven't hosted one of these in several weeks, so we've got a few. I've got some more too that we haven't done yet.
Gene,
the Gene Steratore, man. When I got that, it's kind of a, you never know how they're going to be kind of when you get them, because some guys are really into them and some guys just go through the motions. And oh my God, I cracked up. So I want to go back to something, and some of the stuff that people were saying in the chat mob kind of made me look at this. maybe it was wrong to just assume that there's not a big question about Al Durham's development. And maybe we contradicted ourselves saying he's developed well. Why couldn't he take another jump as a senior? He went from, a usage. A lot of times when guys are at a certain usage rate and it goes up, their efficiency goes down. It's what you see with a lot of players. Well, Al, his first 2 years, he used 14.5% of possessions and then 15.6. It jumped up to 19 last year, and his efficiency went from 101.3 to 108.3. His three-point shooting got better. He got to the free throw line. He was second in the Big Ten in free throw rate. He made his free throws. His assist rate went up. I think, and to either Jay's point or whoever made this in the chat mob, and we gave him a lot of crap last year, but I think with the way he came around at the end of Big Ten play, he really did have an underrated season last year.
And how many big shots did he hit?
I know.
Big layups did he hit at the end of the year?
He wanted the ball at the end of games. That's why I will always submit that him taking that shot late in the Maryland game was good, even though it might have been too early in the possession. It showed a guy that wanted the damn ball in a big situation, and I liked it. So I don't know. Maybe we underrated Al. Maybe there is another level that he can jump to. Because if he becomes a 40% 3-point shooter, it's going to be hard to keep him off the court. Now his defense has to improve because, But anyway, I just wanted to hit that because you guys made some good points there in the chat, and just to kind of square up what we had said about him.
Here's something I'm trying to do as a fan, and I'll fail at it miserably, to try to have reasonable, predictions, reasonable expectations, I guess, of players. Al is going to be a nice player, and if he makes a jump, he's going to be a nice piece. But sometimes when we have juniors like Justin and Al, we expect them to be the top scorer, the top player, the person we're going to count on for consistent play 30 games. And I think, unfortunately, I learned that lesson with Devontae. We expected Devontae to be that 15-point scorer on a regular basis, and he just wasn't. He was just a guy who's going to get hot, and you use him when he gets hot type of guy. And so I'm a little bit reserved on saying that these guys are going to take big jumps and be the difference for Indiana. They are important pieces as seniors to pass down and to get their 10 points a game. I think Al and Justin both. But I'm going to try as a fan to be a little more reasonable in expectations. I mean, there was one time after Devontae's game against Florida State, I'm calling for him to be second team All Big Ten. That's part of being a fan, I guess. I lost my coach.
I'm glad I didn't get caught up in any of that.
But not at all.
And so I think Al can be an important part, and he will get better. But I am very hesitant to say that he's going to lead the team or be that senior leader type. I think the Landers, the Fennessys, the TJDs are the real, and even Race and Jerome are the important, real super important pieces. And Al does what Al does, and make sure he does it well. And Justin do what Justin does and do it well, and you'll help Indiana win and get back to the tournament.
I agree. And you don't want to expect too much, but Ryan's got to go. Dinner's all right. Dinner's ready.
Yeah. Later, guys.
See you, Ryan.
Thanks, everybody.
The only thing I wanted to say about Al, because you said he wouldn't be the senior leader. He'll be he's not going to be one of your top production guys, maybe, but
that's what I meant.
He will be a senior leader in the sense, and this is where I think he and Justin are so important, where seniors are so important, is on the road. Tough environments. When Christian Lander is, who knows if we're even going to have fans at these games, but when one of those road gyms is rocking, Al Durham's been in all those places 3 years, and he's a guy who's shown he can step up and take big shots. So,
and where you're right is I think Al has more toughness, overall toughness than Justin. I think Al works hard, from Joel and everyone who watches him go into Cook Hall. And I think those things play out in your senior year when it becomes really, really important. So what I meant by production is to expect him to be a 15 points your leading scorer because he's going to make that next jump up shooting and that. I don't think that's what Al does. Al is going to be that senior leader, that guy that keeps the team together and maybe wins some games for Indiana. But be who Al is and not who we expect as who we want Al to be is kind of what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well said. All right. Cool. We got to do another chat mob induction one of these days. We might try and do one next week. And by the way, I was talking with Alex about doing a podcast on the brink podcast takeover. So he and I will host Assembly Call Radio one night, and then you and Andy can go host Podcast on the Brink, and we won't even invite Ryan to that one, so he can be real pissed that he doesn't even get to be on Podcast on the Brink. when we do the takeover.
I hope people
we would allow Ryan
appreciated
to be on
that. Andy and I had a good time talking football and a little different format to get used to, or we just kind of hit play and rambled for a while. So I hope people enjoyed that. I know I enjoyed their taking over last Thursday. It was good to watch and be in the chat mob. So I think that's
I kind of wish we could do that sometimes, like the way that the show has evolved now that it's on the radio, because I feel like, and I'll be interested to see what chat mob folks think of this, because I like the segments because it really makes us prepare, and we have to prepare to make good points in 20 minutes, which is a different level of preparation than if you're just going to have like 3 items on a sheet and you ramble about them. I think it helps us get in and out of topics, but there are some topics that when you just have an expansive time to talk and you're not looking at a clock, you can get into a little bit of a different type of conversation, which is why I feel like AC After Dark works well and some of the between segment stuff because we're more relaxed. So I'm curious if people like that about our show, if you wish we would maybe do more other episodes that don't necessarily have the confined structure. We have to do that for the shows that are on the radio, but, it might be interesting to just hop on every now and then and do kind of the more open Crimson Cast style. I don't know. Like I like it. It works for us. But I'm kind of curious.
And there's different. Like I struggle with longer podcasts as a listener. That's just me personally. So some people like the 45 minutes to an hour, and then if they don't want to listen to AC After Dark, they can shut it off a little bit. And I wish I had more time. I don't have a travel time at work or whatever to pop something in. I'd like to listen to the Hoosier Hysterics. I've listened to quite a few, but the 3 hours is hard for me with coaching and everything to find time to get that 3-hour segment. So It's interesting too that it's so nice that there's different levels and different types of Indiana content out there with different formats. So that's my initial take.
Yeah. And I like that people know kind of what to expect from the show because they know what the segments are. So there's pluses and minuses to it. It's like anything. It's just like a coach's strategy, because it's funny. I was thinking about that when you were talking. Well, we talk about the coaches being less stubborn and, being open to some change. Should we try and do that?
It's like, playing someone with 2 fouls, you can't be stuck to your.
Someone said, Tyler, let's have Scott and Ryan do a show together. That's a great idea. Just turn on the mics and let them go. Well, that would be interesting to see what would happen with them because they're, who would take the lead in that conversation?
Hey, can I give a shout out real quick to Moose Trenton Kirk? He was on a sales call and had a cooler full of cold beer for me as he was up in Frankfurt and that lasted all of about 2 hours. I got home in the afternoon, and once I started grilling out, it was really good stuff. So no free ads, so I won't mention what kind it came from. They'd have to sponsor the show, but in order for me to say it. But it was just really cool. I get a text. He goes, "Hey, I got a 6-pack of beer for you. You want to meet me up in Rossville?" And it was the first time I've been out of the county in 55 days, and so we stood 6 feet apart other than the Passover, of the beer, and, we had a good time. But more so than anything, I really appreciate the chat mobs, and we talk about this all the time, and if you're in the community and some of the meetups that we do and the Friday night, virtual stuff
happy
that
hour.
we do, it's just happy hours. It's just really cool. So, now I got another beer that I like, thanks to
Nice. Well, we've got that happy hour coming. So if you're part of the community, we have a virtual happy hour coming on Friday. The last one we did was great, so looking forward to doing that one. And
we have one tomorrow. Did you say?
Tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow.
Okay.
So Jay says he'll host the show where we drink and just talk about random stuff for 2 hours. All right, we'll one of these days we'll do this. It'll be fun. It will be fun. It'll be chaos, but you know what? Sometimes great stuff happens from chaos.
So here's an idea, Jerod, that just came. You need to send me on roving assembly call episodes. So like Trenton came up and delivered me some beer. Just give me an assignment, especially during the summer, to get in my car, drive 2.5 hours, interview someone at their home, and either put it in the community or add it in assembly call after dark. That way I get to meet people. I get to drive.
All right.
I mean, once things get a lot better, obviously with social distancing and everything, and that'd be pretty cool. Maybe I can hit 2 or 3 people in one day and make a summer day trip, and meet people at their places and talk a little bit about their memorabilia or something, and put that in the community.
That's a good idea. All right, let's save that idea. Let's work on that. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Everyone I interview has to pay me a 6-pack. That's the deal. 6-pack of beer.
6 packs with Tonsoni.
Drive to you.
There you go.
That's 6 packs with Tonsoni.
6 packs with Tonsoni. And you have like 6 questions that you ask everybody or something like that.
Exactly.
All
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Jay says his house is an all-day thing. Okay. So,
All right, we'll just put
a
you
case
guys
for Jay.
We'll just put you guys on like a 24-hour live stream, just Coach and Jay
from his basement.
He's
got a great basement, I hear.
He does have a great basement. I haven't been there, but I've seen pictures of it. Okay, let's close up. Good stuff. Thanks for being here, Coach, and thanks for helping out with Banner Monday too, with Coach DeCourcy.
Yeah, and
Mike DeCourcy.
Anytime. He is so. I really appreciate his written work, and talking to him is just tremendous. And like I said, I'm trying to be more nuanced as a fan, and he really does a good job of being outside the walls of our fandom to really make you think.
He does. He respects Indiana fans, but every now and then you can tell he just kind of chuckles that y'all are insane.
Yeah.
Yes, we are. All right. See everybody. Have
Good
a great
night,
week.
everyone.
Stay safe, and we will talk to you inside the community or next Thursday night.